Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here today. As always, I'm so grateful that you would take the time out of your busy schedule to join me here to learn and to grow. Sorry, I'm giggling because my little one decided to pop onto the screen. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see her. As always, quick request right off the top. If you get any value out of this, or if you've gotten value out of previous episodes, please do share it with a friend, send a link, take a screenshot, put it on Instagram, put it on LinkedIn, wherever you are. Let everybody know that I am here having this conversation with the amazing Dr. Anith Pillai, and we are going to have a really fun conversation. If you're into specialty lenses and myopia management and stuff like that, we are going to really dive into that today, but some other really fun stuff with Dr. Pillai. So, Anith, first of all, quick intro from my perspective that I want to give you to give me your perspective. If you don't know Dr. Pillai, he is the owner of Evolutionary Eye Care down in Houston, Texas. He is also a board member of the AAOMC, which is the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control. And he is the Texas leader of the Young ODs of America, YODA, if you don't know them. So thank you so much, Anith, for joining me here, man. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
So this is great, man. I know it's a long time coming. You're a great guy. Every time I run into you, we have a great conversation. I'm always inspired with your energy and everything that you're doing. So I'm glad to finally have you on the podcast to share some of your insights. What would you say about yourself? First question, what's your quick intro if you meet someone new, like at a conference, for example? You were at the, which one was it again? The
GSLS, just recently.
GSLS.
Yeah,
so you were just at this the specialty lens meeting down in Vegas. So let's say you ran into somebody new there. What's a couple of lines you would say about yourself?
Yeah, the first thing is, private practice owner. I'm very proud of that, and it takes some time to get into that world. So a private practice owner in Houston. We have actually 3 locations in Houston, and our emphasis is mostly specialty care. So while we have a little bit of primary care, mostly our business is based on my specialties, which is specialty contacts, keratoconus, ortho-K, and my partner specialties, which is vision therapy and low vision and pediatric care. Okay. And both of us do a lot of ocular surface disease management. And now that we have 2 new doctors that are joining on board, they're now getting to those specialties as well. So that's how I would introduce kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis.
That's great, man. Really good that your practice is really entrenched in specialty care. That's something I'm finding I think is going to be really important moving forward, right? For the whole profession of optometry. Primary care is important. Obviously, we need that. But like for us to continue to expand and to grow and to, to be able to serve our patients better, those specialty care services are really important. How long ago did you open your practice?
So our first location opened in 2016.
Okay. And were you right into specialty care right off the bat?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I first graduated, me and my partner both graduated in 2012. We're in the same class. We actually sat right next to each other. And that's awesome. around fourth year, we had this envision of, hey, creating this business model. And we talked about what we wanted to do. And, the reason why I think it was successful was because, number one, even at that young age, we had an idea of entering it into with a business mindset, where while we're still friends, we want to make sure that everything is done from a business perspective and no hard feelings and all of that. But also he had my vision of not focusing purely on primary care. You have to initially as a cold start, but venturing out where really most of our business are into these fields. And I got very lucky that he didn't want to do what I do, and I didn't want to do what he does. So he had a passion for vision therapy and low vision as much as I have a passion for orthokeratology, scleral lenses, and specialty contacts. So that worked out really well. We both knew that we loved dry eye, and that passion just grew as we developed our practice because it's just so prevalent. I mean, practicing that you can't go a day by without seeing a dry eye patient. It's just everywhere. Yep. And that grew naturally and organically because those patients just always came in. So we had that idea from the onset, and we knew that as it grew, we eventually wanted to do less and less primary care and more on the specialty side.
That's great, man. First of all, the partnership thing, that's really great advice, or that's great that you shared that like right off the bat. assume there's a partnership agreement, and you're kind of like, this is business, just so we know how the business is going to be run. Really set that groundwork early on, because otherwise things can start to get real messy and tricky and hard to navigate.
Absolutely. And, you know, I didn't, as I mentioned, I graduated in 2012, but we started our practice in 2016. And we had so many mentors that told us horror stories of opening with a friend. And that really led us to go down that path. I can't tell you the amount of money we spent on lawyer fees to draft up contracts and everything else, but we wanted to do it the right way. So, you know, the other thing that helped out in the beginning is, and my partner, David Chow, who is a fantastic partner. I owe so much of our success to him and all the hard work that he does. But even though we went to optometry school together, he wasn't my best friend and I wasn't his best friend. I think that helped out a lot. We had our own lives and things that we weren't always relying on each other's friendship. Like we could come into it saying, hey, you didn't do this in the business. And you could, well, remember when I helped you when you were 15 years old? You know, like, so that helped to a degree. Now, obviously, when you go into business with someone, you become very close. I mean, I talk to him more than my wife now. It's just the nature of what we do. But having that mindset of making sure that, listen, friendship aside, we want to make sure that we're doing this as if I just met you and I can't trust you if things go wrong. That's how we went into the contract negotiations, of how everything was set up. Because everything that usually goes wrong when friends get into business is, oh, I can trust him, and don't have the setup to back up when things don't go wrong. Because friendships can be tricky, especially when money is involved. And he was 100% thinking that same way.
Yeah, that's really great. Actually, that's an interesting point that you guys weren't like best friends, because that definitely would have, I think, changed the way you started that partnership. Giving a little bit too much trust or a little too much leeway, and like, oh, we don't need to write that in there because I think it'll be okay. That's actually an interesting perspective. And I think there's, you know, I've had some younger ODs and new you know, people getting into new partnerships reach out to me because I have a business partner as well, and we've known each other for a very, very long time. And so they were kind of reaching out to me like, okay, what's good, what's not, what worked, what didn't, you know. And so sharing that kind of information, I know there's other people out there who are listening and want to learn from that. So that's really good. When you opened, you said initially you had a little bit more primary care. You kind of have to, you got to see whoever you can see, right? Just to kind of pay the bills and whatever. What type of steps did you take when you were like, all right, now I really want to dig into specialty care and do less primary care? Were there specific things that you did or did not do that allowed you to go down that way?
Yeah, I think, and I can speak probably to a little bit of what my partner did as well. So the first thing is, what are things that come into a primary care practice that you can venture off into the specialty care? And dry eye is a big one, right? And I don't know if you consider dry eye specialty or not, but certainly not just pure primary care, right?
Right.
So every patient that we came in that had that problem, being very aggressive into saying, hey, here's this issue, not just sending them off with lubricating drops and I'll see you in a year, saying, hey, this is an issue that I'm seeing. Let's bring you back for a dry evaluation and really see what the underlying cause is and what we can do about it, because there are so many great things that we have that may be able to treat this problem that isn't being addressed right now. So that was low-hanging fruit, the dry eye practice portion of it. For Ortho K, kids are coming in. Mom and dad come in, kid sitting in the chair. When's the last time kid had eye exam? Oh, he's wearing glasses. His glasses got worse. That was easy for me because I already had a passion for myopia control, saying, listen, you know, little Johnny's prescription got worse. Yes, we can give him a stronger pair of glasses, but when is that going to end? You know, he's 7 years old now. Imagine when he's now an adult and we're getting stronger and stronger prescriptions. There's something we can do to prevent that. So that was the second step that was easy with patients that were already coming in. Hey, hi, everyone.
Speaking about kids coming in.
Same thing for my partner with vision therapy. And something that I learned from him, and that's what's great about having a partner that does something different from you, is you constantly learn from each other. And vision therapy and myopia control, we have learned over the years, they're not so distinct. You know, I thought it was when we opened, but we're seeing there a lot of overlapping situations that go on with those two specialties. So we learn a lot from each other. But he even mentioned, you know, when you see a lot of pediatric patients, and if you're looking for some of those problems, of those binocular vision issues, you're going to find it much more than you would think. I remember I gave him a quote. I was like, yeah, if I really looked for it, probably 1/3 of my pediatric patients probably have a binocular vision issue. And I thought that was aggressive to say that.
Yeah.
And he came back to me, he said, you're probably underestimating it.
Wow.
So that was his low-hanging fruit, because he's already seeing pediatric patients. And he was mentioning how I was talking about myopia control. He was talking about how these binocular visions exist, you know, whether it's, you know, kids coming in diagnosed as possible learning disabilities, that might be a vision-related issue. So that helped grow his practice. And then the specialty lens one took a little bit longer. And what I did was actually go out to our colleagues, our neighboring optometrists, and I would reach out and say, hey, we're offering this service. If you do it already, fantastic. And if you have any questions, let me know, because I was already doing it in my prior work experiences. But if you're not doing it, you know, we'd love to help out and handle what you want us to handle and refer the patients back to you. So that was a lot of grinding, going to our colleagues' offices, introducing myself, you know, bringing the staff treats and just having conversations with them. And that took time to build. But the biggest thing about that was their trust that I don't want to steal any patients. You know, that's what everybody's worried about. It was quite the opposite. I went in with the mentality saying, those are your patients. If I can help your patients, let me know. But you got to take care of them. Like, I'm not taking care of their glaucoma care. If they need a scleral lens, great, I'll handle that. But they still come back to see you. And that slowly built up over time. And as the community started trusting us more, as we did more events and being involved with the local Houston Optometric Society, things like that, they, I think, saw me as a presence in the community of someone that they could trust for their patient care, and knew that as I started presenting and lecturing more, that this was a specialty that I really knew what I was talking about, but also that that was all I wanted to do. I wanted to help that particular condition and then have them manage everything else.
That's really helpful, actually, in all of those stages of that, you know, different variations of the specials that you offer. But I think the most impactful right there at the end, when you talk about specialty lenses, the effort that it took to go out and speak to colleagues, to convince them. But obviously you're an authority in the space. Like, once you start to see that, like, I would feel, if I was in your town, I would feel very comfortable. Like, I have a friend, you may know, Dr. Sherman Tung. I always bring his name up here because I think he's somehow involved with AAOMC as well, but he's definitely in the specialty lens myopia control space. So for years, I referred all my patients to him. Even if his office is like over an hour away from one of my offices, I would just refer to him, because I was like, he's the authority. He's the guy I look up to, a guy I learn from. I'm going to send everybody there. So I would do the same with you if I lived around your area. And, you know, to kind of say the next thing on this, which is something I've kind of been harping on a little bit lately, is when you do that, though, like, I'm the person who's sending a patient to you. When I send that patient to you, I'm doing multiple good things. One is I'm making sure that that patient's getting really good care, continuation of care from me to you. I know you're going to take care of them. They're going to be happy with that. But it's also strengthening our profession, making sure, you know, these inter-referrals that we do is good for the profession. You know, people learn that there's a lot more to optometry than just spinning the dials. You know, there's people out there doing specialty lenses and other things like that. So it's really good for the, I think for that long-term outcome of the profession, if we learn to do that a bit more and get comfortable with that. But we got to make sure we can trust each other, which is the other thing that you said is so important.
I think that inter-OD referral is something that's maybe being underutilized, but I agree, it's so important for the future of our profession. If we want to grow together, we got to trust each other too. You know, at a funny story, and this is probably not the great business and practice management advice, especially for optical related, but at time, I remember when we opened our second location, you know, we're just building up and not optical heavy based, but we have one, and patients refer us for ortho-case scleral lens vision therapy, but patient comes in and they want a high-end pair of glasses or something that they don't see. The first thing that we did when we opened our second location was give our staff a lift as doctors that I visited that we know in the area, saying, you should go visit them for your pair of glasses.
Wow.
Referring back. I mean, it's one thing to refer to me, but it would be nice for myself to refer to them as well. And
Yeah.
I think that's important, that they saw the value of referring to me for this service. Well, optical and providing that service, that's very important too. And if they can do a better job at it than me, why not refer to them?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really great. Those who are listening and watching, I took a little break. I paused because a lot of times my daughter, at least one of them, is hanging around here, and they're usually pretty good. And I've gotten to, and they even pop onto the screen sometimes, and I've learned over the years to let it be because it's just the easiest thing, and it's actually kind of fun. But dude, there's one experience, and it was the very, very first time I gave a webinar during COVID. So everything shut down, and now everything's on Zoom and whatever, right? The very first webinar I ever gave, and I was just kind of starting to do my speaking stuff and whatever at that time too, right? I wasn't really into it as much. Very first webinar I gave was for a company based in Italy. I happen to have used their technology on a one-site trip to like the Middle East or something, right? So we're doing this mission vision trip using this really cool wireless technology that is it's not very readily available. And so since I was one of the few people, one of like 10 optometrists in the world who use their technology, they're like, can you do this talk? I was like, sweet, let's do it. Global webinar. There was like hundreds of people from literally around the world. This is the first time, and maybe the only time I've done a talk to that many different people in different parts of the world. And I'm like all nervous and stuff. I'm getting all ready to talk to all these people in different countries. As I'm talking, I see, so in that different room, the door to the room was right behind me, like on the other side of the room, but behind me. And I see the door open, and I see my daughter walk in, and I was like, oh, sorry guys, give me a second. And I gently picked her up, took her outside, and I closed the door, and I came back and sat down, and all you hear is her wailing at the top of her lungs, just so upset because she's never been taken out of the room like that before. She just waltzes in whenever I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And she just lost it. And I'm sitting there in front of hundreds of people like, give me a second. Oh, man. So that was it. My very first experience. And I learned from there. I was like, I'm just going to let it be. If they walk in, they walk in.
You know what? Let her in. You're going to get more views with her on the camera. So.
It's true. People don't care about seeing me. They'd rather see the cute kid. Anyways, she's gone now. Maybe she'll come back. But where were we anyways? Okay, so we were talking about specialty care and referring people and inter-OD referrals. We were talking about how you kind of started to build that specialty side of the practice, right? As you started to lean away from primary care into specialty care. Let's go a bit more specifically into specialty lenses, because that's really your thing. Like I said, you're the authority. Let's say there's lots of other amazing doctors who are in the space, but it's not something that I'm really into. I was telling you before we started recording, I'm coming from a very beginner level. This many years into my career, I've just started. We just bought a topographer like last year. I've done exactly 2 scleral lens fits and 0 ortho K fits. So that's my perspective. But I'm really excited to get into it because the 2 scleral lenses I did were great successes. And they were both people who had no other option other than their glasses. And in both cases, we had them see better through sclerals than they could see through their glasses. Like, it was just a win, right, in essentially every way. So I'm super excited. Now, let's talk to someone like Harbir, who's just entering in or really interested in entering in. What advice you have for that person, like, to kind of get started?
So one thing I want to start with is, at some point, I also only had 2 scleral lens patients. And I at some point had 0 ortho K patients, right? That's where I started. I didn't do a residency. That's a question I get a lot. How much do you recommend a residency versus not? Right. There's pros and cons to both. I didn't do one. But I have many colleagues that have done a residency, and they don't regret it. And you can get a lot of experience that way. But I'll give you from my experience where I came from, coming into practice, and really in school, I didn't ever really see a scleral lens patient, never did an ortho K patient. So I was thrown into the weeds a little bit. My first job there, it was a practice that had a lot of patients with high astigmatism and keratoconus, and were in corneal GPs, etc. And I didn't have any experience with it. The owner did have experience with it, and he asked me, "Hey, do you want to get into that?" And at first, I wasn't sure, but I was like, I might as well get my feet wet, right? And as the new doctor, I'm not having the full schedule like he is. So it's a good learning experience, right? So one thing that helped, and I will say this to any doctors that are starting out as an associate and your schedule isn't full, if you're seeing 2 patients a day, what you can do the other time, it's a great opportunity to learn. So during that time, what I would do is try to learn as much as I can about specialty lenses. So my days in the beginning filled with seeing 2 to 3 patients and then webinar after webinar after webinar, article after article after article. And I was so happy to be out of school because we've been in school for, gosh, how long, right?
Many years.
And study more and more. It doesn't sound intriguing, but as I learned more and more and as I started reading more, I realized I'm not studying for a test anymore, right? I'm studying because I want that knowledge, the passion. I'm curious. I really want to get better and better. So I highly recommend, if you have an interest into it, reach out to those resources. And there's a ton of free resources nowadays. There's free webinars on Scleral Lens Education Society, free webinars on, there might be a small membership fee now, but on gpli.info, there's a ton of great resources. So many great articles, even on review of optometry, on cornea and contact lens. Everything is on the web now. So you can learn a lot just from the internet resources that are available nowadays. And then that's how you kind of get the basics, okay? Knowing basics of doing scleral lenses, basics of starting with Ortho-K, how everything works. Then you do 1 or 2 under your belt and you still have some questions. There is the next level where you get to that intermediate of, okay, now I kind of know at least what to start with, but man, I'm running into some roadblocks. I'm running into some trouble and I don't see what to do now from the online resources. And that next big jump were the conferences I attended. And that is a big investment in yourself. I highly recommend going into with the one we just went to, that I just came from, the GSLS, fantastic specialty contact lens conference. ICSC, which is coming up in May, which is a scleral lens conference. It is probably one of the best scleral lens conferences in the world. So I highly recommend that. And the other great thing, all the great minds come to that conference to present and also just to do workshops and really just to share their information. Vision by Design. It is, in my opinion, I'm biased for sure. I'm on the board of the AOMC, which hosts the Vision by Design, but you can ask any colleague that does Ortho-K and myopia control. It is hands down the best conference for Ortho-K and myopia control. I mean, there's really no other conference like it. To see the passion that the doctors in that community have, not only to share their knowledge, but to share their knowledge even outside the classroom. That was the biggest driving force for me to not only join AOMC, but then eventually become a board member. Everybody is just so passionate. I mean, they just want to continuously share their knowledge and they want everybody else to do exactly what they're doing. I mean, it's electric when you go to that conference. So I highly recommend Vision by Design. And once you start going to these conferences, you'll learn so much in the lecture halls. You really will, especially when starting off. And recommend asking questions and sitting next to somebody who is experienced and kind of picking their brain. But a lot of the learning happens at dinner right after, or at the bar right after, because that's where the minds come together and anything goes. Ask any type of question. And when all those bright minds are together in one location, you have to take full advantage of that. And while I go to them and present at many of them, I don't include myself in the bright minds. I include myself as the just avid and passionate learner that sits back and learns from the colleagues who've done this for many years. And that has really helped me kind of progress in the specialty lens care.
That's awesome, man. Great advice. Thank you. You know, I always find that when I go to conferences, there's the lecture hall or classroom education. Then the next step is there's hallway education. And then there's what I call barstool education, which is, you know, the later in the evening when things loosen up a little bit. And there's a lot of really, really good lessons I've learned, often life lessons. But anyways, and that all comes from just being around.
Barstool lessons ourselves.
We have, yeah, man. Absolutely. So that's really great. Let's talk a little bit about vision by design, because you kind of get to see that one from the inside a little bit. I'm curious. You know what? Let's put a pin in that for a second, because I thought about something else. We come back to vision by design in a second. Thought about something else while you're talking about how passionate people are, well, specifically at vision by design, but in general with Ortho-K. And like recently, over the last few years, I've become a lot more intrigued by Ortho-K because I'm leaning into myopia management quite a bit. But I still haven't done a single Ortho-K fit, right? But I've done basically the other three main things, like soft contacts, spectacle lenses, which we have here in Canada, and atropine. I've done a bunch as well. So the other three I've done a fair amount, but no Ortho-K yet. And simply because I had no experience and I wasn't really sure how to get it set up. But one thing I've experienced is there seems to be a bit of a divide, right? It's a bit of a polarizing thing, Ortho-K, right? There's people who absolutely are passionate and love it and think it is amazing. And then there's a lot of people who are really skeptical about it. I find vision therapy similar too. But I wonder why. Do you know why people would be skeptical about Ortho-K? Do you agree that this exists, that there are people who are skeptical?
I do see it in the ophthalmology community to a degree. There's some older studies that showed incidence of corneal ulcers and things like that that are very antiquated. And I mean, you got to remember, those were designs that were decades old, where when Ortho-K was first developing, and we're really just figuring it all out, prior to me and you even practicing. So a lot of ophthalmologists that I've encountered in the past that had that view, they're holding on to that old data, which is surprising because they wouldn't hold on to 50-year-old data for anything else, right? So that may be one. The other thing is, and this is the question I get from patients, which is always tough to answer, is, not why I should do this or, why I should do it with you, et cetera. It's how come I never heard of this before? That's the number one question I get. And that's a tough one. And I think it's because, I don't know how it was for you in optometry school. I didn't have a lot of Ortho-K education in optometry school. There was some, but, I did a lot of glaucoma, macular degeneration, a lot of ocular disease. I wasn't exposed to Ortho-K as much as those things. So even myself coming out, who does a lot of that now, it wasn't trained into me. So where do you finally get that experience? Well, you have to finally get that experience if you knew you wanted to go into that specialty. That can be tough if you're coming into a primary care practice and now you have to devote time, especially not the owner. How do I implement this whole new specialty and not take away from my bread and butter? That's a lot to ask. It's the simple fact of changing habits, I think. But I do believe it has gotten so much better over the last few years. I mean, from when I graduated to now, it's exponentially better. We would never even be talking about Ortho-K like this on a platform such as yours. That wouldn't be a topic of discussion. So to have that and have an amazing conference that's dedicated specifically to that, that's big as it is now, I think we're headed in the right direction. So yes, there's still some hurdles that we have to jump, but we're getting better and better. And you can see that with the amount of industry support that's coming into the field. You see the bigger companies now investing into myopia control. I mean, think about all the products that are now available. That didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. So we're definitely heading in the right direction, but it's going to be steps. It's going to be steps.
Yeah. Interesting. It makes sense what you're saying. So again, I'm coming in from a very beginner, novice kind of a perspective here, but I've seen that sort of dichotomy of people who are into it are really into it, and then there's everybody else is kind of like skeptical about, does it even work, or like, is it harmful, or right in the corneal ulcer thing. But I think a lot of it is the education and the awareness around the whole thing, right? So for me, the more I'm seeing people like you that I trust and I like are telling me, Harbir, this is really something you got to get into. I wouldn't argue with you or Sherman, for example. And I would get into it. But the more people like me who are on the fence start getting into it, the more those skeptical people will start to kind of also realize the benefits of it too. So hopefully I can become a proponent of it like you are. And I think you're right. The fact that there's conferences dedicated to this stuff means that there's a lot of people who are actually interested in it. So let's go back to the conference thing.
Yeah.
Vision by design. Tell me, what does it look like from, your perspective as a board member on the AAOMC to put on an event like that?
Yeah. So, it's a big board, and I don't want to say that I have the influence of actually all the logistics, and there's people much more skilled than me that put on booking the hotels, the venues, etc. But where I am involved is talking about how we can have more and more doctors attend, whether it's speaking and lecturing, and what topics are people interested in. So what it goes into is, now at this point of the level that the Vision by Design conference is how can we now expand to more and more doctors that are not fully experienced of doing ortho-K on a daily basis, right? Because like I said, the world's leaders of ortho-K and myopia control come to this conference, they speak. So everybody that's involved in that is there. That's great. But we need to make sure we're sharing that knowledge now to a much wider audience. So that's where, specifically for myself, where I'm trying to expand that doctor base of who's all hearing about it. Because I've walked into doctors that haven't heard about AAOMC or Vision by Design, which is fascinating to me, because if they'll ask me a question, but hey, I want to get more into ortho-K, I want to get more into myopia control. What are conferences? What are meetings? What are organizations I should join? And I said, well, there's the conference to join or to attend, right? That's dedicated to this. There's the organization to join that's dedicated to this. So making sure that more people are aware of that. And the other thing I want to mention about Vision by Design is, I mentioned how passionate everybody is, and it's really something that you just can't avoid. I mean, you're going to walk away from, I guarantee everybody that comes there, they walk away saying, I can't wait to do this tomorrow. But the other big thing is how much every single practitioner there wants to help each other. And especially for somebody who's getting started. That's the biggest thing, right? When I lecture with another doctor, or I'm at the bar with another doctor who's already experienced doing a lot of it, we'll chit chat about little clinical things. And there's a lot of wisdom to gain from them. But there's nothing that gives us more joy when a doctor comes in and says, hey, this is my first time here. I'm just starting out. What advice do you have for me? That is what makes us light up, because we cannot wait to have that conversation. So that's awesome. FYI, anybody sees myself or any other doctor at Vision by Design, if you come with that question, and I hope you do, be prepared. We are going to sit you down and we are going to have an in-depth conversation, because that is what really grows us. When I mentioned that issue that I have when patients ask me, how come I never heard of this before? The reason that happens, and the solution to that, is having more of our colleagues do this. If my colleague down the street, 2 minutes from me, is starting to do ortho-K, that is a blessing for me. That's not going to hurt my business. It's not going to hurt me, because now more people have heard about it. That's going to help all of us. So if everybody around me started doing myopia control, ortho-K, scleral lenses, I don't view it as competition. I view it as our profession growing. So I think that's the other biggest thing that I want to see coming into our next Vision by Design, which, if you don't mind me plugging, in my home state of Dallas, Texas. Oh, nice. It's going to be happening September 2nd through the 6th. So lots of days of great content. They'll have tracks for beginners. They'll have tracks for the advanced myopia control practitioner. As I said, in my home state, Dallas, Texas. And if you want to learn more about it, and Herbir said he'll share some of the links here, but the website is aaomc.org. You'll find information about AAOMC, but also about Vision by Design. And they have a lot of great resources for not only for doctors, but also if you're thinking of giving information to patients to learn more, they have a patient-based content site as well.
Oh, that is helpful. That is helpful, because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what kind of content or literature can I put together that I could show my patients or put on my website? So that's very helpful. So aaomc.org. But like I said, yes, I'll put the links in the notes or in the captions to that and to Vision by Design so people can find it. And you know what? I'm going to be one of those people who's walking in the bar and like, all right, I'm new here. All right. And then, That's it. That's it. Let's see how many people come running over, buy me a drink or something. We'll see.
Oh man, you're gonna be overwhelmed. You're gonna be overwhelmed for sure.
I look forward to it. All right. So listen, I can't have you on the podcast and not talk about your threads, man. You're always dressed to the nines, style. You know, me and you both like dressing up, but you know, last couple times I've seen you, dude, just it's been top notch. And so tell me, you get your stuff, some of your stuff custom made. I love the way you dress, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. The suits are custom made. They're you know, got the logo on it. This is not the best time to talk about it. I'm coming from work in my scrubs, but I appreciate it. I got to tell you,
go look at Anith's Instagram. You'll see pictures.
Yeah. Thank you, man. And you know, every time we have this conversation, all I'm looking for is those compliments. So thank you. That's what makes my day. But it was funny. So I was at GSLS recently and hanging out with my colleagues, and you know, the same thing as you. They're complimenting on me, and I had a colleague come up to me talking about, you know, you're always dressed so great, you know, but you and Harbir, you guys, and they mentioned it. I was like, yeah, he's on his game. So you're well renowned to conferences you're not even attending. That's who your game is.
Wow, that's a huge compliment. Thank you very much. Wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I was at a lot of conferences last year, man. It was a blur. I lost track of where I was half the time, what time zone I was in. I'm trying to take it easy this year, but it's a blessing. A lot of stuff's coming up, and I'm hoping to find myself at some good places this year. We'll see how it goes. So, Anith, there's a couple of new things I'm trying with the podcast, and you're one of the first that I'm going to be doing these with. So bear with me. I'm glad it's you, because I know you can handle change of pace and different questions and stuff like that. So first thing, we're going to do a quick little rapid fire. Try and make the answers short, like a few words or like one sentence kind of deal.
That I'm not good at, but I'll do my best.
Listen, who cares? Just try. All right. What in your life gives you energy? What is it that you're around somebody or doing something that gives you energy?
Two things. One of them more recently, the other one been for a while. Meditating in the morning and working out, exercise.
Beauty.
I want to give a thing about exercise. I was told this when I first started my co-practice. Make sure you have something that gives you time for yourself and that doesn't hurt your body, because there's so many ways you can when you first start a business, and exercise is a great one.
100%.
Yeah.
Let's go the flip of that. What drains your energy?
Well, it might drain my energy, but it's, as you know, it's always fun. So probably drinking. Yeah, that's one.
Yes, sure. But you know, if you're around good people, it sort of balances out.
It can. Yeah.
What keeps you up at night? Does anything keep you up at night, or do you sleep well?
I do sleep pretty well, but what does, and this still happens to this day, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think about an idea or something I should have done for my business. I need to go calculate that. I need to check this metric. I need to incorporate that. That happened probably 3 days ago. It woke me up in the middle of the night. So there's so many blessings of being a business owner, but the downside is you never punch out.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. What would you do if money was no object now? What would you do for work or during the day? What would you like to do to keep yourself busy?
I've actually thought about that a lot recently. I think for sure it would involve my specialties, for sure. So I think it would be great. I mean, lecturing, you know, you and I both love speaking, so that I don't think that would go away. I think doing it nationally on a more one-on-one basis, where if a practitioner was thinking about incorporating a specialty into the practice or how to make it even businessly viable, going in, doing workshops into the practice, talking to doctors one-on-one of strategies that have worked for me that could hopefully work for them.
Love it. You'd be giving back. That's amazing. I love that. You'd be helping more people if you had the freedom to do it. That's great. All right. The last one of these rapid fire is, what task or activity brings you into your flow state when you're doing it, you lose track of time?
As far as like getting ready to do something, or that I don't think about anything else?
when you're in the middle of doing a thing and you lose track of time, you're so into it, you love it so much. Is there something that you do, whether it's daily or once in a while, you get to play a sport or play music or something in your work, whatever it might be, that you kind of like?
I used to really love playing basketball, and then that goes away as you get older, and hopefully I can get back into it. But there are two things, and one, so exercise and working out. I work out pretty much every day, so that helps me to get rid of stress for sure. So the stressful things go away. It does help me think a little bit more, but the stress goes away for sure. The other thing is when I'm creating like a lecture, like a presentation. Now that takes a while because when I start, I do everything to avoid it. There's nothing worse than staring at a blank screen. Yes. It takes me forever to get started.
Yeah.
So I'll do anything to avoid it. Like, got to write a lecture. Oh, I didn't do the dishes, or I got to go take out the trash.
Oh my God. Same way.
Once I'm 3 to 4 slides in, then the juices are flowing, and then I won't stop.
That's amazing. It's so funny, dude. I do the same. Legit. I'm like, oh hey. Talking about, you need me to fold the laundry today? Like, what?
Right.
Just
Harbir,
just shut up and do the presentation. I'm the same way, man. Oh my God. All right.
Yeah, the amount of things you do for the household to avoid doing a presentation.
It's funny. It's funny. Okay. One other, so we're done with the rapid fire. There's another new section to the podcast that I've added very, very recently. And it's called You're Welcome. And it's taken from the movie Moana, which I understand you've seen. There's a song that Dwayne Johnson's character Maui sings. He's saying, "You're welcome," because he's this God who's brought everything to the earth, and he's saying, "You're welcome for all the things, the sun and the stars and all of this."
Well, anyway, let me say you're welcome for the wonderful world you know.
So I know it's a little obnoxious, but it's fun. It's tongue in cheek. I would love for you to share one really deep piece of advice. What is something profound that you think would really change the person who's listening to this, change their life a little bit for the better, and that we can thank you for?
Two main things, if you don't mind. First one, it's always better to learn from other people's mistakes than your own. So if you can find a fantastic mentor to learn from who really wants to see you grow, it'll be worth its weight in gold. Number two, do everything you can to invest into yourself. Invest in your health, in your well-being, growing better as a leader, growing better as a person, listening to audiobooks to make sure that you gain a new skill. Invest in yourself is how you can guarantee that you'll become a better person tomorrow.
Love that. Invest in yourself. And to that, Anith, I say thank you. And you say?
You're welcome.
Hey, it's okay, you're welcome. You're welcome.
There it is. I'm hoping this is going to catch on. You're welcome. Thank you. That's great. Okay, now going back to the regularly scheduled programming here, there's always two questions I have asked at the end of every podcast that I'm going to ask you in a second. Before we do that, plug yourself a little more. Where can people find you? Where should they go? I know you gave some links already, but if they want to connect with you directly.
Great. Sure. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram. Handle is at Anith P23. That's ANITH P23. If you follow me, you know, I post a lot of cases. So most of my feed is actually ortho K cases, scleral lenses, dry eye cases. So there's a lot of clinical content. So always happy to answer questions on there. There's a few things where, you know, if I'm seeing Harbir at a conference, I'll post pictures of us as well. But most of what I post is actually clinical cases and mostly specialty care. Facebook is just my name, Anith Pillai. And if you want to even put in my email, it's Dr. Pillai at evolutionaryeeyecare.com. So I always love getting questions and comments from colleagues. That's really what I enjoy. Most of it now is on IG. So I'm happy to do that. Fantastic. Yeah. But hit me up on any platform. Again, at Anith P23 on Instagram, my name, Anith Pillai on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, again, just my name. Our website is evolutionaryeeyecare.com if you want to just find out more about what we do.
Beauty. I'll make sure I put all of that in the caption as well. All right, man. The last two questions. Number one, if we could hop in a time machine and go back to a time in your life that you were struggling, you're welcome to share that moment if you'd like. But more importantly, what advice would you give to yourself at that time?
Yeah, it would definitely be, I mean, there's many things that I went through. Probably the most recent was just opening a business. I say 2016, that's when we opened the doors, but the process started in 2015. But yeah, 2016 and 2017, it was rough times because it was literally every 6 months, me and my partner looking at each other like, all right, how many more months do we have till we go bankrupt? That's kind of how the conversation went. And we were confident. I would say we were positive, more so than confident, that we could probably make it. But the advice that I would do is stress doesn't help, planning does. Being stressed out doesn't solve any problems. What are you going to do about it? So think of solutions, plan out, think of strategy to help. I think I learned that much later in my life of there's no point in having that stress. It internally hurts you as a human being. And secondly, it does nothing to solve your problems.
Yeah, that's great advice, man. I think that advice could apply to a lot of scenarios. So planning versus stress. So the last question is, everything you've accomplished to this point in your career, in your life, how much of it is due to hard work and how much is due to luck?
Yeah, to this point, I think a lot of it's to hard work for sure. More than hard work, I think I want to pivot. The beginning stages of hard work, and that took time. I think where you want to eventually pivot, and another piece of advice I would give is work smarter than harder, right? There's to that point of sitting in that blank slate and not wanting to deal with that, and instead doing the mindless task. Working hard is a little bit easier than working smart, to be honest. It's hard to think of strategies to implement that can be successful rather than just, okay, let me track this, let me track that, let me do the grind work. Thinking smarter is probably the biggest thing to exponentially grow rather than just working harder. And in my opinion, thinking smarter is a harder thing to do.
That's clever. I like that. That's actually a very good point, actually. We do kind of get caught up in doing the work, right, versus finding ways to elevate. Right. So that's great advice, man. Thank you very much. Anith, man, I appreciate you coming on, dude. What's that?
No, so you're welcome again.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's right. There's a lot of times throughout the episode that people could say you're welcome, but I really focus in on that one. But thanks, man. I really great to have you on, and maybe have you back on another time. I'll try to come out to Dallas for Vision by Design, and maybe report back from there. Yeah,
that'd be fantastic. Would love to see you there. Would love to see all your listeners, all your viewers there as well. So thank you so much for having me. It was really, really a true honor. This is when you made it, when you're on the 2020 podcast, right? That's when you made it big time.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I don't know if that's true, but thank you very much. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's watching and listening to the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.